They're trying to create seats based on race, and they can't do it. And we're going to hold them accountable just like any other state.
The Department of Justice is suing Gavin Newsom, governor of California.
That's right. And this is what a lot of people have been wondering if it would happen, because this comes after the voters of California approved that Proposition 50 ballot provision just a few weeks ago. And that was the redistricting plan that Gavin Newsom was saying that, we're going to take on Texas. We're going to take on these states that are trying to redistrict before the midterms. And so they actually went to extraordinary lengths to put a ballot provision forward, which would give an exception to the way that California does their congressional districts. Instead of their independent council, which they had enshrined into law in California years ago, this would be a one-off where it goes back to the independent council after they're able to combat Trump in this election and redoes the districts. Now, the Republican Party of California had already sued. The DOJ has filed a complaint citing federal statutes that they will now be fighting in court that says we want to join this lawsuit of the Republican Party, but here is our own complaint. So they want to be a party to this lawsuit, not just an amicus brief or something like that. And what they are alleging is that it violates the Constitution, it violates the Voting Rights Act, because, and they even said it in their own words, we'll show some of the sound from Pam Bondi when she announced this last night, that they were doing it specifically going to communities and using the racial demographics to try and create these new districts that would be more favorable to Democrat seats. You cannot gerrymander or do that based off of race. And that is what they are alleging, that this was racially driven to get them up to 5 more seats in Congress in California in this midterm election coming up. So they are saying that this plan and this redistricting map cannot be used in 2026 and beyond. They're seeking an injunction early as well, but they're going to have to fight this in court as it goes forward. Now, I think you should hear from Pam Bondi, because this is Bite 9. She was on Sean Hannity's broadcast last night talking about this. They just filed this yesterday. It hasn't really made a ton of news yet, but this is what I know even our callers have been wondering. Can the federal government step in? Can there be a lawsuit? We knew that the Republican Party of California had already sued, but is there anything that the national government can do? Because they were blatant about what they were doing. They weren't saying, we think our districts have shifted so drastically, even though maybe they have because so many people are fleeing California, that we need to redistrict early. What they were saying is, no, we are doing this to fight Trump. We are going to redraw our map so we can have more power to fight the president and Republicans. So hear what Pam Bondi had to say last night, the Attorney General, on Sean Hannity's show, Bite 9.
It wasn't even illicit. They are flat out publicizing what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. They're trying to create seats based on race, and they can't do it. And we're going to hold them accountable just like any other state. I mean, they very publicly said, Sean, what they're trying to do, and it's illegal gerrymandering. They cannot do it. So, yeah, we sued them today. We're going to continue suing California until they start complying with the laws of our country.
And when you look at also this problem, not just in California, but around the country, it makes you wonder if there's going to be, outcry on both sides about the way that these congressional districts are drawn.
Dave's calling in Indiana online too. Dave, go ahead.
I'm wondering, should we be calling our representatives, asking them to redistrict Indiana?
Yeah, you're saying locally in your area, should you be saying, hey, if California is doing this, why shouldn't we? Of course, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but some of the response of this was also coming from some response from Republican states that were presenting similar options, like in Texas and some other places that were considering things like this. So, Dave, all bets are kind of knocked off when this happens. Unfortunately, it's the way politics works, and I am sure other states are now going, oh, well, you two can play at this game.
Well, and to Dave's point, there are already members of the Indiana legislature that are looking to do this.
Yeah, I don't know much about Indiana.
It has set off a firestorm, as you've said, where Texas redistrict, and they were saying that the entire purpose of their redistricting was saying that the census that took place counted too many non-citizens, because the way representation and how many seats in Congress you get are based off the population of your state, and then they allocate them that way. Texas was basically saying that because of the way that the census took place, that there were too many non-citizens that were counted in certain areas, and that messed up their maps in their previous allocation of congressional seats. So they were trying to correct what they saw was an improper allocation based off the previous census. So they were doing it early, and now different states have different laws about when you can and if you can do that. California had a law saying you cannot. Texas had different laws that were available to redraw the maps. But what did California do? What did Gavin Newsom do? They decided, okay, we don't like the law that we passed actually to try and protect independent districting, even though it's still very lopsided there in that state, as everyone knows. And what did they do? They said, we want to go around the independent commission. We want to do it our own way to combat Texas. Now, it has kind of set off a chain reaction of other states. Now, Indiana currently has a 7-2 Republican to Democrat map. So there is Democrat representation in what is a very red state. It's a very conservative state, the heartland. People don't think of Indiana as being their neighbor, Illinois, that is very blue.
It's very blue, but has very red pockets.
But
also.
what their new map would do is make it 9-0 Republican. So it has turned it from being supposed to be representative
politicizing everything
to everyone is going to be over gerrymandered into a way that is really
your state is going to be controlled.
To dig yourself out of that hole.
Your state will be controlled by a political party. And do you really want that? Let's go to Peter in Virginia, who is an ACLJ champion, which I really appreciate. Peter, go ahead.
I appreciate what you guys do. So details between California and Texas. When Texas first talked about redistricting, my understanding is it was a fight about, well, the 14th, 15th Amendment, voters' right, all that, is you can't make, zones according to race. So they said, and it used to be, so we're just going to break it up. Then California seemingly comes along and says, we're going to make it about race. Do I have that correct? Do you know the detail on
the thing,
what's
Peter.
the difference between the two?
Yeah, Peter, I'm going to kick this over to Will Haynes because Will knows all about redistricting.
Right.
You know all the details. You get deep diving in the minutia of the maps.
So the map that was drawn by Texas after the last census, and then adopted by their legislature was challenged in court by people saying we think that these districts are illegal based off of the provisions that you mentioned, Peter. And it actually had a trial that it was going to fight over these districts in May of this year. So it's been a court battle that's lasted for a while. As well as Harmeet Dillon, who is the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice lead, she sent a letter. She's Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights to Texas saying there's 4 districts that the DOJ has concern may run afoul of the 14th Amendment as well as the Voting Rights Act because of race-based gerrymandering. So what did they do? They called for a mid-decade redistrict, and that's what the result is of this. Now, obviously, we know what happened with that. We know that the Democrats all fled the state. They tried to stop them from getting a quorum. Then they finally got it passed. California, Peter, it sounds like, according to the allegations by the DOJ, not only were they going to say, we're going to fight Texas by redistricting, but the methodology they used, indeed, is what so many people would criticize Texas for doing. They found districts and did it based off of racial voting blocks that would favor the Democrats, which is illegal. So that is what the DOJ is arguing. I have a feeling, especially with all these other states you're talking about, Maryland's talking about it, Indiana's talking about it, Florida has thrown it out there. You're going to see these cases be fast-tracked to the Supreme Court if they indeed all have these lawsuits. There's going to have to be some sort of figuring this out, but also the details may be so different, it could be a really messy legal fight ahead.